Okay, so holy crap. We're switching gears. We're going from Beyond the Map's Edge to the book called The Gold House Part 1. This is the most intriguing book I have ever read. As you know, if you listen to my last blog of Treasure Tempest from Justin Posey's book, I was ensnared into the Victorio Peak lore, and I am hooked, you guys. This is incredible. I think I found Carlotta, the Empress of Mexico. I think I found her ruby earrings hanging from a woman's ears named Mrs. Holden, and here's why. And I may have to make this 2 parts, but stick with me. This is so cool. I also found another hole in New Mexico near one of the cabins that I'm going to be talking about. And this will be my backup hole in case my hole in Montana doesn't pan out. So I'll talk about these 2 rascals in the story, Willie and Buster, in a minute. But first I want to start with a woman named Margaret Perroni. She was an English and French of French descent. She was born in 1871. She was a doctor of medicine in Chicago who ended up in Hot Springs, Mexico. She lived to be about 102, and at some point she came into contact with these 2 rascals, Willie and Buster. Willie, one of the rascals, claims that Margaret, who was fluent in many languages, helped him decipher a treasure map that he allegedly found in an adobe house. But remember, Willie is a rascal. What the author of the book really thinks happened is Margaret's adopted son, Jack, actually found the map. And I put Jack in quotation marks because he was just a young man that Margaret nursed back to health, and then she kind of took him in and took care of him. So he was a sick and homeless kid. And when after Margaret nursed him back to health, he was riding his horse wearing a red coat that Margaret gave him near Fort Selden when the weather turned bad, and he was out gathering wood scraps to build a fire. He tore into a windowsill from an old abandoned cabin, and he is the one that discovered the maps. They were in the windowsill of an old abandoned cabin. So he brought them to Margaret, and when she saw them, she couldn't believe her eyes. She was educated, she was multilingual, she was skilled at reading sextants, and she understood what the signs meant and could decipher the map. So she sent him back out to retrieve the gold. And no matter what the rascal Willie claims, it wasn't he who found the trove, it was Jack Reynolds who found the map and the treasure. It wasn't Willie. But Willie followed Jack. Somehow he got wind of it, and he followed Jack to the treasure, and he shot them. He shot him, rather. This is before pronouns. So anyway, they found Jack's red coat that Margaret had given him with 2 holes in the back. So bottom line, no matter what Willie says about who found the gold, we believe it was Jack Reynolds who found the gold and the treasure, not him. And later, Doc Noss enters the story, and I don't know if Doc Noss and Ova find the same treasure trove or a different treasure trove, but that's going to be the later in the book, and we'll get to that later. So Rascal Willie and I'll call them the Rascals, Willie and Brandon. I don't know if they both lived on Holden Ranch or if just Willie lived on Holden Ranch during most of this, but this detail will be important later, so keep Holden Ranch in mind. So Willie had a big mouth. He claimed to have been kidnapped at gunpoint more than once, and the book goes into detail about a lot of these stories, including the time he and his partner Buster were running from their kidnappers, and they tried to jump onto a moving train, and Buster was pulled under the train, losing both legs. Sounds like a tall tale, unbelievable, but there is a newspaper clipping about it that I put in my Patreon page if you want to check that out. I think Willie reported being kidnapped so many times that the sheriffs in the area eventually stopped believing him, kind of like the boy who cried wolf. In one point of the story, the now amputated but healed rascal decides to move the gold. He hired some trucks from a lumber yard in Hot Springs, Mexico, but as the convoy of trucks was on the way to the site, Buster panicked and called it off. There was a lot of drama with him and Willie, but the bottom line is there is a map And I'm going to put that on my Patreon page, where the author says the truck convoy turned around. And what's interesting about that map is there are 2 holes on that map that will be my backup for if my Montana hole for Justin Posey's treasure doesn't match up. And that map of those 2 holes is on my Patreon page. I guess I was nervous about saying that. But anyway, let's see. Continuing on. So eventually, the 2 rascals were able to retire comfortably in California. They made up. They were friends again. Willie and Rascal. They kind of remind me of Pancho and Lefty. But they retired in California, and now here enter the old lady with the earrings, Madeline. Madeline is the mother of Gerald Holden. Remember the Holden Ranch that these 2 guys lived on? She was very close to the 2 rascals for reasons unknown, and I believe during much of this she knew about the treasure. And the author of The Gold House, John Clarence, is brilliant at connecting dots. He reached out to Madeline in 2004. Her name was Madeline Vivian Crockett from the Holden Ranch, and she knew about about the trove, and here's what she had to say. There was a bank of gold bars about 3 or 4 feet high and about 6 feet long against the wall of the cave. And then there was a chest over to the side with jewelry and necklaces. And the author noticed that Mrs. Holden wore ruby earrings. And these earrings weren't run-of-the-mill earrings. They were excessive. They were opulent. They looked royal. And it just makes you wonder, did one of those rascals give her those earrings from the chest in the trove? And it also makes you wonder, were they Carlotta's earrings, the Empress of Mexico? Were they Carlotta's ruby earrings? Which, of course, makes me want to read the book and find the rest of her jewelry. All right, thanks for tuning in. I hope you have as much fun as I do with this book.